Just so we're all clear today, we're going to be learning about the characteristics of autism. No one's walking away with a bit of paper today saying I'm autistic. This was created through getting all the kind of criterias of what an autism diagnostic typically is. Now, the reason I say typically is that there's a few ways to diagnose autism, and it really depends on what practitioner you see. There's like a standard one for England, then there's others for other countries, and you can't really choose what type of assessment you do. It really depends on what the practitioner is trained in. Typically, there's a lot of overlapping things. To let you guys know, who am I? Why am I talking about this? I'm Nat, and I work at Exceptional Individuals as the head of community. But more importantly, I also have autism, as well as dyslexia and dyspraxia. Just like Miranda, I've got the whole lot, which is always fun. When I was younger, you know, I just got told, okay, you're high functioning, and no one really told me what that means. All I thought was the negatives. I never really thought about what positives could be attached to that diagnosis. The important thing is today, you guys will 100% resonate with some of the things I mentioned. That does not mean you're definitely autistic. Or you might be autistic and think, that doesn't sound like me at all. It's so broad and diverse, so just kind of keep that in perspective. Oh, so I just got a few questions. Willa says, how old was I when I started to talk? Believe it or not, I didn't really talk till I was 5. You know, I was a slow talker. And now try and stop me. I couldn't really walk as well. I was in like a wheelchair when I was younger because my autism was so strong that I just found the world so overbearing, so many senses, that I just kind of curled up in a ball a lot. I used to rock, you know, I used to have far more severe symptoms than I do now. And that's something we'll get into, how you can't actually outgrow autism, but you can adapt to the world around you. And that's essentially what's happened. And that's why we always talk about children when we talk about autism, and very rarely adults, but yet they still have it. Let's crack on. Today will hopefully be a bit of fun as well. So a little bit about what is Exceptional Individuals. We are a UK-based company. You might have guessed it from the accent. And we support those who are neurodiverse. And essentially what that means is those who think differently. And we specialize in those with dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, and ADHD. But there's also others that count, such as dyscalculia, dysgraphia, OCD, Tourette's. You know, it all kind of overlaps and interflows. So autism used to be the one that was known as if you were neurodivergent, but now it has kind of like blended into all the others, and that's kind of where we go. Now, as an organization, we do a wide range of things, but the vast majority of our team are neurodivergent. So you've seen the background, we've got a lovely team. I believe we've got April in the audience today, who's one of our fantastic volunteers, and we also got a few of our staff members. And we help recruit diverse talent. So if you're autistic and you're really struggling to find a job which is inclusive, you can always drop your CV to us. And we work with a lot of companies that we have personally trained to make sure they at least know the bare basics to support you in the workplace. We do assessments. So maybe you can't afford to get a diagnosis, because I'm not going to lie, they're expensive. And sometimes you've got to question whether they're actually worthwhile or not. But we can do a free one in the workplace to UK people at least. And in each of your respective countries, there may be different schemes which allow you to get the same support you would get had you had an official diagnosis anyway. Also some guys who work with organizations, and you can also pop in for a coffee when there's not a pandemic around. All right, so first of all, what is autism, or what is neurodiverse? Because you need to know exactly what we're talking about. Is it a disability? Is it a deficit? Or is it a difference? Well, we like to use the Spiky profile at Exceptional Individuals, and why we like it is that it doesn't focus on disadvantages, and it doesn't just focus on strengths. You know, it shows you the broad range. So if you see on this graph, and this is just an example, the skill sets can be different for each individual. You, for instance, could be amazing at mathematics, but then overly averagely poor at being creative. Or you might be an amazing decision maker and pretty poor at communicating. So neurodivergence is normally the fluctuation of abilities, where someone who is neurotypical, someone who doesn't have any of that stuff, tends to be a good all-rounder. We are specialists. And that's how I describe neurodiversity to people. I'm a specialist in certain ways of thought. Okay. And we've got, Dave says he's got trouble, difficulty hearing me. Can you guys do a little thumbs up on the things if you can hear me okay? That's what I like to hear or see. So yeah, now that being, oh, thanks, Amy.
Most of the time, it's just something got my mic on with feedback comes through every now and again, I think. So.
Okay, well, what I should do is if I put you all on mute, that should make it a bit easier. So again, am I autistic? Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, okay, we've got autism, we've got high functioning, we've got ASD, we've got Asperger's. What is this focusing on? Now, this is focusing on the general ASD diagnosis, and that's because that is the most up-to-date one in terms of they got all these different kind of brackets and they smushed them together to do one general overall one. But if you are already diagnosed with Asperger's, it still is a thing, even though people aren't diagnosing it going forward. All right, now we're going to do some fun things. So on here, guys, on your phones, you can answer, what activities would you rather do? And I spent a lot of time picking these adorable gifts. So do you like reading, sports, socializing, or gaming? Like, if you had to pick, what would be your favorite thing to do? And trust me, there's a reason why we're doing this. Yeah, if you got none of them, yeah, sorry, Willa. just make up one. Okay, so has that worked? Oh, no. Oh, here we are, yes. So the majority of you said you like reading, very few like sports, a couple like to party, and a decent percentage like gaming. Now, Rachel has said she likes to read, but through audiobooks, and I'm the same. To me, I don't really see there being a difference. Like, I say I read books, even though I always listen to Audible. But the reason we did this is people with autism, well, autism, if you go back to the Greek origin of the word, it just means alone. So people who like to be more isolated, prefer the company of themselves. So reading is a very typical escape, or any sort of like, you know, audiobooks, anything along those lines. Sports, and this is an assumption, but tends to be quite low on people who like autism, mainly because I think a lot of it requires cooperation, you know, being a team player overall. Now, I love cycling, I like running, I like doing things on my own. But just to say that, there are always instances. I think there's an Australian guy, I forget his name, who's, or maybe New Zealand, who's a really famous surfer who has autism. And, you know, there's always going to be an exception to the rule. Socializing typically normally is quite low down, and gaming, if you think about it, isn't too dissimilar from reading. Now, Dia says she likes socializing, but only in a kind of a controlled way. And I'm the same. I love socializing with my friends, but if you say, do you want to go to a networking party? I'm not so keen on that. All right, cool, guys. We've got a few more of these, and hopefully we can build up a bit of empathy. So you see this lovely picture of the Mona Lisa by our lovely Leonardo DiCaprio. No, not Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo da Vinci. What do the facial expressions on the Mona Lisa tell us about how she is feeling? So if you type on your mobile device, if you're doing this, or if you're not, you can type in the comment section. From her facial expressions, what is she trying to tell us? And thank you, April. The surfer guy is called Clay Marzo. So Marina says, okay, curious. We've got who knows, pensiveness, don't know, wishful and amused, sad, bored, it doesn't, nothing, shy, I don't care. Good job it doesn't tell me who said these. Bored, sneaky, content, she's content, no idea, multiple things, sad. It's impossible to tell if she's happy or sad, struggling to read. Now, if you guys noticed, there's a good amount of people in this chat, but no one of us can decide. And I picked this image because even for those who aren't autistic, this is a very difficult picture to get across. But for autistic people in general, it can be quite difficult to read facial expressions, that kind of subtle emotion. Yes, I know that means happy. I know that means sad. But if you go like, that's kind of subtle differences can be hard to pick up on. And this is why, like nuances, when maybe you make people upset when you don't mean to, or you're unintentionally funny and you don't really understand why. It's because of those kind of like mixed signals. And that is a very typical autistic trait. So I like to think, just like the Mona Lisa, which is considered the best painting in the world by a lot of people, autistic people are very similar. Some of the best people in the world, but good luck trying to read them. All right, now, just another fun one. What is something you collect? So again, this is something you can type either on the phone or on the computer. Is there anything that you guys love collecting? Are you a stamp collector? Do you love a bit of train spotting? And I'm sure you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Now, for me, I collect acorns. Weird, right? I just love nature. So, I find some, really nice ones and I paint them and I sell them on Etsy. So I like being really creative. When I was younger, I used to collect sticks and stones. I just like the texture, the smoothness, and obviously, like most people, progressed onto Pokemon. So we've got nothing, house plants, Minnie Mouses. I'm guessing that's April. Cards, ornaments, hoodies. Yeah, I'm wearing my nice hoodie today. DVDs. So it's stationery, nice. Vintage My Little Ponies, nice. Plushies, Christmas decorations. Wow, we've got some interesting things. Now, again, a very typical trait of autism is very overlaps with OCD. Like you can get obsessive almost, or kind of fixated on one thing. It's like the world is so massive and there's so much stimulant, it's far easier to focus narrowly on one particular area. Like April, for instance, might possibly be the world's most knowledgeable individual on Minnie Mouse ears. And while the other world doesn't interest her, that thing you can focus on. So again, just because you're a stamp collector doesn't mean you're autistic, but what it does mean is that the likelihood, is higher than those who do not have that thing with collecting. And it doesn't just have to be collecting in the conventional sense. For instance, on IMDb, I like to make sure that I've seen as many films as possible that are on like the top 500 films before you die, and in a way that's collecting to like a database in my head. Kitchen gadgets, what is it? Squishmallows? Squashmallow? No, I don't know what that is. Beer mats, bonsais, nice. Shiny stuff, all right, magpie. Cool. What is the Queen's official birthday? And I hope you appreciate the face I picked. It was my favourite one of the Queen. The 2nd of June, 12th of June, 20th of November, or 21st of April. So the Queen's official birthday. Interesting. So it is actually the 2nd of June. And for those of you who are like, I know she was born on the 12th of June, that's when she was born, but her official birthday was the 2nd of June. And I believe the 20th of November was her coronation and the 21st of April was her anniversary. Now, how does this relate to autism? I'm sure, you know, April's doing her research now, I can always tell. How does this relate to autism? Well, just like being a collector, you can also be like a collector of knowledge and facts. And people with autism are far more likely to be a real stickler for dates. Who's vandalizing my sheet? And that's the thing. So if you're a royalist, you'll know everything there is. For me, I'm a Leninist, but not in the sense that you're thinking. I know everything there is to know about John Lennon, or at least I like to hope so. From, you know, when he was born, when he changed name on the Beatles, when he met Yoko Ono, when he had his lost weekend. I can go into exceptional detail. So yeah, dates and obsession almost with dates is a very common trait. Now, 2 of 3, and I'm going to have to clear the whiteboard, which, all right, what happened in 1979? Was it the fall of the Berlin Wall? Was it Margaret Thatcher becoming PM? Did the Titanic sink? Or did actor James Dean die? Nice. And Rachel just asked, can you be autistic and not have deep like interests in these areas? Absolutely. Remember, these are characteristics. For an official diagnosis is far more complex than this, and it takes all the things together, and it's done on a case-by-case basis. And yeah, Margaret Thatcher became the UK's first, and we'll say only, female Prime Minister. What did Theresa May do, eh? Anyway. Now, this is another one, because again, with dates can be another thing. So with people with dyslexia, for example, might struggle to remember particular dates or numbers, or those with dyscalculia. Those with autism might have a far more attuned mind when it comes to remembering exact like dates in history. There are certain conditions where people have like exceptional memory retention with numbers, but just a slight more appreciation. Maybe you remember people's birthdays more than others, or there's certain dates that for who knows what reason you just remember. So Amy says, I wasn't born in 1979, but I gather it was Margaret Thatcher through general knowledge. Yeah, you can kind of work it out if you know, you only need to know 1 or 2. Fun fact, where I live, the Titanic left. We did a really good job of making sure it was top notch. What is the first thing you saw or see in this image? So quick look, don't look at it too long. As soon as you see it, write it down. Okay, let's see what you guys have got. Okay, people, 2 old people, elderly couple. See, this in itself shows how diverse people are when it comes to writing answers, because what should have happened is that like the more answers you guys write, the bigger the word gets. But we got men playing guitar, 2 different things, people playing, singing. Nice. Cup, lamp, a guitar. And if you see, now this image, you've either got there 2 people singing, you know, with a little guitar with Mexican hats, I assume, having a good time, or you've got an elderly couple there facing each other, a woman and a man. And neither answer is wrong. And that's what I really want to get across when it comes to autism. Yes, it's a different way of thinking, but it's not a wrong way of thinking. You can still see, you can still look at the same thing that anyone else looks at and still get a different answer. And there's not a particular one. I'm not saying if you see the guy playing a guitar, you're autistic, or you've got Asperger's if you see the old couple. It doesn't work like that. But what it does mean is that maybe when your friends or family sees something, you sometimes pick up on a different detail. And that's because the way that you look at the picture can be different to what your brain focuses on. Cool, so well done on that, guys. All right, what would you get the most enjoyment out of? So on this, you just kind of slide in terms of enjoyment level. Similar to what we said earlier, we've got either, would you enjoy going to the library more, or would you enjoy going to a party? So essentially, being on your own or being with people. Now, Miranda says she likes to be with lots of people, and I just want to, like, yes, autistic people typically do prefer to be alone, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't invite us to parties. A lot of the time, you know, I just like being asked. I might not rock up, or I might come fashionably late, but it's very much, and Mohammed says, but no more than 6 people. Yes. What a time to be autistic, eh? Suddenly, all those years of isolation are coming in handy. I'm a pro. But yeah, it's something, you know, you can fluctuate with none of these things. It's not like you have to be a loner all the time, but just saying more often than not. Kel has said reading parties. What a compromise, eh? Everyone's a winner. All right, so this one is story time. So here, I just want you to write anything next. Just think of something creative. Once at a work party, my bus started. Now, obviously, this could turn into chaos. This could be like Cards Against the Humanities, but try and keep it PG. So once at a party, my boss started annoying me, started dancing, talking, a game of pass the parcel, nice, dancing, did a conga line, singing a folk song, give me a pay rise. That's probably the most unrealistic one. Did a sexist joke, sadly, but probably true. Write calculus on the wall, brilliant. To sing an Oasis song, I mean, he's probably sang Wonderwall, who doesn't? To tell everyone how great he was, I'm thinking David Brent there from The Office. Comparing his clothes to all the women, it made me feel sick, keeping up with the Jones, nice. And you guys might be asking, why am I making you do this? Well, this part is to demonstrate the creativity side of autism. And typically, someone with autism might have a very good, like a creative side to them, okay? So you could think you might be more likely to imagine, to be imaginative, to be a daydreamer, to think of more surreal things. Now, this is just my personal opinion, but I think, you know, things like Rick and Morty, you know, things that are a bit more surreal and over the place, or anime, that to me, I've seen a link between those who have autism to those who like kind of more creative ways of storytelling. So that is why this is relevant. It doesn't always mean you can articulate this creativity, but it does mean that that creativity is up there anyway. So Jan says she's got limited imagination. A lot of the time the imagination is there, but it's not always being able to articulate it. I tend to have very strong interests, which I get upset about if I can't pursue. How true is this statement? Is that no, that with autism, remember, the way I always explain it to people, and maybe this isn't the most flattering way of describing it, but you know when horses, like police horses, have those blinkers on, they wear that not to blur their vision, but to allow it to be focused in what's in front of you and not what on the side. So it puts more emphasis on like one subject matter. And with autism, that's where the whole collecting thing comes in. It's not that you are immune or, you know, oblivious to what is around you, but you tend to focus more heavily on something which interests you. And if that thing gets stopped or you get told you can't do it, your brain like kind of short wires. And this is why a lot of people tend to like act up or be naughty when they're in school, is because they kind of get blocked of doing what their brain would do. Think of it like a circuit. If you cut the circuit, the light turns off. And in school, you're expected to have the light on all the time. Now, this is a bit of a different one. I want you to rank the facts in terms of what you find most interesting. And on your phone, you can like move them around. For those of you who don't have using your phones, don't worry too much on this one. What have we got, Mr. Trump? The king of facts. So the first one is, the moon has moonquakes. The wood frog can hold its pee for up to 8 months. Your nostrils work one at a time. There's no such thing as pear cider. So which one do you think was the most interesting to you? I only care about the facts if I can fit them into a system or pattern, then I am fascinated. But if are utterly random with no connection to other things, I forget the facts. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's really typical. A way that I would explain that to people is that, you know, when people in school say, I hate algebra, makes no sense to me. And it's because you can't link it up to real world scenarios. But if you say, we're going to be learning how to do your finances today to make money, suddenly there's a purpose towards the reasoning, and the brain is able to latch onto it. Now here, for the facts, we've got apparently the one you guys find most interesting is that wood frogs can hold their pee up to 8 months. I can't even seem to do it for 8 minutes. But yeah, that is interesting. The moon has moonquakes, I guess like earthquakes. The nose works one at a time, the nostrils, I knew that. Apparently it's like, this one works, and then with your like circadian rhythm, they will like switch different nostrils, and that's to stop one getting kind of overused. I'm sure Michael Gove could probably do with that knowledge. And there's no such thing as pear cider. Now, I actually thought you guys would find that a bit more interesting. I found it interesting anyway. So you probably thought, I've had pear cider. I had it at Spoons the other day. Well, technically you didn't, because cider is only made from apples. And if you have it, if pear is actually called something completely different that I can't remember. But basically, no one was buying pears. So they rebranded it and called it cider, even though technically it's not. Perry, yes, Jenny, Rihanna, thank you. It's called Perry. Very interesting point about Perry. You know what, guys? You may have learned nothing about autism today, but at least you know about Perry. And why this relates to autism is, do you see how passionate I got? Because I love facts, and it's a very typical autistic trait where you're able to kind of like pinpoint different things. And my memory isn't that good, but when it comes to remember particular facts, I don't know why, I'm great. Did you know that all polar bears are left-handed? That's something I've never forgotten. Or the Romans used to make dice out of sheep knuckles. Another April, if you don't mind me using you as another example, is amazing at quizzes. You're just able to like beat us every time. So all I can say is, I'm glad we're not doing a whole quiz today. All right, in Harry Potter, now obviously I'm going to pick Harry Potter, I love it. Is Professor Snape a good or a bad character towards Harry? All right, Divya thinks he's a good guy, but anyone else, you know, he's a bit mean. Would you say he's a good or a bad character? I'm just assuming most of you have read or watched Harry Potter. If none of you have, wow. You know, stop this webinar right now and go put it on. Okay, what? 8 of you have never watched it or read it. You muggles. Now, okay, good, bad. Now, interestingly, the vast majority of you have said he's a bad character. And what's interesting is that it's actually quite widespread. Now, with autism, it can be quite difficult to read between the lines, to see like hidden context. So, you know, like sometimes when your mate says like, and pardon my language, oi, dickhead, yeah, they're not actually being mean to you. It's endearing. And it's that hidden context which someone with autism might struggle to kind of pick up on. And in Harry Potter, Snape is very mean to Harry. He's always kind of like picking on him, having a go at him, you know. He's a bit of a jerk, to be fair. And everyone hates him, thinks, oh, he's the worst teacher. But actually, all he's trying to do is protect Harry. And it's through being mean and distance towards him is his way of keeping Harry safe. Now you see how there's like multiple kind of contexts and layers here. If you're the person to take things on face value, again, very typical with those who are on the spectrum, but if you're able to see, you know, a bit more detail. Now that's not to say if you're a massive Harry Potter fan, you will not understand it, but I'm just saying as a general example. Miranda says it took her ages to suss it out. Thanks. And Richard, we are not talking about employment that much today. Today is just about finding out the characteristics of autism and whether or not you have them. Yeah, well, Snape, he is a jerk, but he means well. All right, so next one is, how many people would you consider a friend? Alexandra has said, Snape may have been good, but he was an absolute jerk. Yeah. Rihanna, I prefer cats. Cool. How many people would you consider a friend? Oh, relate to the question, makes sense. So quite a lot of you have one or two. Most of you have 3 to 6. Only 3 of you are super popular. Now, friends is interesting. What do you consider a friend? Is it someone you could tell your whole life to and trust to the end of days? Is it your Paul to your Lennon? Or is it someone you got on LinkedIn or on Facebook? For me, I think it's been proven like we can only have like 6 friends really, you know, people who truly get you. Though those with autism typically struggle to make friends, or at least struggle to make decent, long-lasting friends. Now, in many ways, that sounds like a negative, but I actually have always seen it as a positive, because yes, you might not have up to 30 friends, you might only have 1 or 2, but those 1 or 2 will be ones that stick through you throughout your entire life and be ones you can really depend upon. Or you might just like cats, which, you know, who doesn't? So that's a typical thing. And you can normally tell that on quite early on, that you got 2 kids together, one's got autism, one hasn't, the other one kind of wants to socialize, hang out, and the other one just doesn't really seem that interested. And this does actually translate into adult life when you're in the work environment, when you have to do socials. You'll go along, but it's not really something that you kind of yearn or crave for as much. Willa says, friends is general people I know, but I only have one trusted friend, my hubby. Ain't that cute? But then Jenny says her dog's her best friend. And do you know what? I totally get you. I got lots of pet rabbits and I love them. They're all my best buddies. Look at the patterns. What pattern comes next? And for this, you've got to just message me. You can either private message me in the comments. And I just want you to look at it and think really quickly, can you work out, is it A, B, C, or D, which is the next pattern in this series? Why is this relevant to autism? Well, people with autism typically are very fantastic problem solvers. I don't want to pigeonhole any of you, but you know, there's so many people with autism who work in the tech sector, work in coding, able to like deconstruct different things. And this is be able to kind of like take things down to like their core assets, being able to like analyze them to like the micro detail. You might start to see now how, you know, things from like collecting and being analytical to like spot the difference, how it kind of all overlaps. It's all about how the brain, you know, pinpoints what it chooses to focus on rather than taking in the whole information. But the answer here is B. And it's because if you see kind of, we've got blue there, the next one is blue's 1 step down, the next one, the blue is a step further, and on B, blue is at the bottom, but you know, it kind of goes down, down, down. So this is just one quick example. We're almost there. All right, this is a bit of a cheeky fun one. Reading between the lines, what is Trump really saying? So here he says, windmills are the greatest thing in the US. Are the greatest threat to the US, to both bald and golden eagles. I won't even try to do the accent anymore. Media claims fictional global warming is worse. So in this statement, what is Trump trying to say? And this goes back to autism, or people with autism or autistics really struggling to read between the lines. Again, you say something, they'll take it on face value, and that's why humor and jokes can be quite tough, because you know, jokes is all about the hidden context. Innuendos are all about kind of that bit behind, you know, what you're really trying to say. Like, is that a gun in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? To someone who struggles with innuendos and the hidden line that go like right over the head, to anyone else, I'd be like, So let's see what you guys have said Trump is really saying. Now, we've got eagles need protecting from windmills. Well, from what he said, that would seem like the obvious one. The media can't be trusted, re-elect me, I'm telling the truth. Or fossil fuels mean more money for the US, which makes me look good. Or we should focus less on the climate and more on America. See, when you actually break it down, it's quite actually tough to understand what is someone really putting. For me, I would say the answer is that in the end of the day, everything he says is about getting re-elected, about proving that his way of thinking makes sense, because if you construct it all down, you know, fossil fuels makes the most money from the US. They sell it all around the world. Their basic country goes on it. If we keep using fossil fuels, then the economy will still do great. If the economy is doing great, he'll get re-elected. And eagles are symbolic of America, and he's, you know, America first. So you can kind of like break down a very simple statement about windmills until you get like the real hidden context. And that can be something that those with autism might really find challenging. So this is always fun. If you guys ever played Where's Wally, or if you're American, Where's Waldo, have a look in this image and I want you to find Waldo, but do not put it in the comments, okay? I'm just going to give you a few seconds to find Waldo or Wally, and then we'll see how many of you got it right. Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Where was Wally? Was he in the top left, the bottom right, the bottom left, the bottom right, or the center? And I'll be honest with you, this was an easier one. I was going to be mean and give you the image. You know when there's like a billion different Wallys and you've got to find the right one? But I thought I won't be that harsh today. But for those who don't know what he looks like, he's just a tall, lanky guy with glasses who have like white and red stripes on him. Cool, yeah. Guys, he was in the center. He was a little guy in the middle. Yeah, Rosanna says he's a guy with a little hat. And if you get really creative, you can also find his little dog, you can find his arch enemy, you can find his missus, you know, you got the whole section. And this comes down to people with autism typically see the big picture. Oh no, sorry, typically struggle seeing the big picture. So as someone who is neurotypical, you might see the whole image, just like that picture with the you know, the couple and the musicians. Like they were the same size as each other, but the brain focused on different elements. With Wally, you might actually find these things a bit easier. Dia says, having trouble keeping up with that answer had really come up on the phone, was looking at the laptop screen. All right, sorry, Dia, I'll try to go a bit slower. And with this, if you're the type of person who will always pick out the details, now this can demonstrate itself in a number of ways. It could be that you're quite critical because, you know, you're like, that shelf's wonky, or that image is okay, but, you know, that doesn't actually look like Minnie Mouse because her nose isn't quite like that. So you're more likely to pick up defects or things that aren't quite right. Or if you're watching a film, you're more likely to pick up on Easter eggs, you know, things that are kind of like hidden in on little things. If you watch Finding Nemo, I'm pretty sure there's like a Buzz Lightyear who's sunk to the bottom. On all the Pixar movies, there's like little nods. In Frozen, I believe you can see Rapunzel with her haircut at the wedding. So there's like lots of little things. Rachel, yep. So that's, again, the autistic trait. Seeing details that others may miss. And as you can imagine, that's a very positive thing. So though that was all of like the fun games, and I hope you guys gave it a bit of an insight on terms of those with autism. So you probably thought, you know, there's a lot of things you said which make so much sense to me. I think it's worth me exploring this a bit further. Now, we have a characteristics quiz which has 50 questions, which I recommend you guys doing if you have time. And though you can't go away saying, I'm autistic, I got a high score, what you can do is go away to your GP, a doctor, you know, someone who is qualified, and say, I did this, and I rank quite highly on this. Do you think this is something which is worth exploring a little bit further? Or you might think, okay, I'm pretty certain I am on the spectrum, because we're all on the spectrum somewhere. All I need to know now is what things can help those who have autistic characteristics and have those characteristics. You might not even need a diagnosis. So try to, like, that's what I would say is like next steps. For me, I think it's important for me to understand how my mind works. And if a label helps you, then cool. But it doesn't have to be an essential. So now I'm just going to talk about how you can get some support if you did resonate. So Dia says, I think I'm not autistic. I have had really different sense of humor and laugh when I'm not supposed to, and I'm blunt, though I do like online quizzes. Is it possible to move off the spectrum? So far after listening to you, I definitely tick all the boxes in my childhood all the way to my 20s, but now it's just socialization that is uncomfortable. Librarian, sorry, I can't pronounce your name, but yes, absolutely. So you can't, as I said, autism is for life, but what can happen as you get older, you naturally adjust and kind of like find coping mechanisms. So it sounds to me that the other things have just gone easier, or you've kind of adapted rather than got rid of.
Can I, Nat, can I make a point on that last
Go for it.
reflection? Is that I think you're absolutely right, because I think if we reflect our childhoods, we can see all our difficulties. But as we grow up, we develop our own coping strategies to kind of survive, exist, and participate in the world. And that's really great. But I think, unfortunately, what happens, and I can reflect this in my own experience, that if those around you, so for example, in the workplace, start to strip away them coping mechanisms that you've had and demand you, place greater demands on you to be more like neurotypicals, to blend in with neurotypicals, then the coping strategies can be weakened, and your kind of traits of autism can present kind of greater and then kind of cause further problems. So people will see you even more different in the workplace, and I think unfortunately you become a target for bullying, and that's the reason why I think it's so important, as somebody who's recently diagnosed with autism, to know if you're autistic or not, to understand your brain, which is something you said, Matt and Nat, that I think it's really important we understand our brain and then try and help educate those around us to kind of understand us, in order to be able, to access, for example, the workplace or education or whatever we might be doing, and to have pleasure in it, opposed to it being a battle.
I absolutely agree. This is Rachel, Amy. And I'm not diagnosed with autism, but I really want to get tested to see if I am, because, as I've just said in my comment, things don't quite fit. But I've had issues in the workplace before, basically along the lines of what you've said. And it's true that if people strip away your coping mechanisms, it just ends in disaster, really.
Oh, thank you guys. Honestly, really well articulated, and I completely agree with you. Because we've got a few more minutes left, I'm just going to quickly say on what you guys can do if you feel that you could do with a bit of extra help or support. And I will send the quiz to you guys. So maybe you need help finding a job which is inclusive and understanding. You can always come to us guys for that, particularly if you're in the UK, but we will support anyone. We do training in the office, so maybe you want to make your team a bit more aware. We can do that. We can do consultancy, you can come to get like one-to-one support. There's a whole kind of like wide range of things you can do. Sorry guys, I'll just quickly meet you guys for the last bit. Now, if you guys ever want to have an assessment, which is a workplace assessment, and this is particularly aimed at those in the UK, you can, again, just go on our website and see if you're eligible. But the only criteria really is that you're in the UK you and have a job and you resonate with being neurodivergent. And if that is the case, then there's a strong possibility you might be eligible. And I think we're almost at the end, and then I'll let you guys have any other questions. Yeah, so if there's any questions you guys have, we've got 4 minutes. I'll do my best. I'll stop sharing my screen now. And is there anyone else who'd like to comment or say, you know,
can I,
comments?
Nat, sorry, can I just make one more point without dominating the group? Do you have like a contact that I can contact you where you can share some other support things that I can provide, especially for the women in the group? I belong to a ASD group for women only, and we normally meet in London, but we are on Zoom at the moment. We meet the third Monday of every month, and our group is growing because obviously we're meeting on Zoom, and I'd really like to share that with the women, because I know that support groups for women with autism, you don't need a diagnosis in order to come to the group. If you think you're autistic, you're more than welcome. But I know there's very limited support kind of out there at the moment for kind of women with autism. So I'd kind of maybe like to invite all the women in the group to the ASD group I attend, for you to seek support kind of from others. So I can give that through to Nat after, and I don't know if you're able to disseminate that.
Okay, well, Miranda, how about this? I think we have a Facebook group called Autism Opportunities, which I recommend you join. Again, I can send it in the follow-up email, and you can always post any workshops, any meetings coming up, more the merrier.
Okay.
It's all, you know, and just use it as a space where you can just let people attend. But absolutely, I'm more than happy to share.
Cheers. Can I just say then, if you've got a women's group, I think that you should really be having a men's group. I don't like sexist only one gender meetings. But thank you ever so much. I really enjoyed everything today. I don't know whether I'm still autistic. I more have dyscalculia and dyslexia and dyspraxia, but my reading ability, I've got 2 degrees and I'm not brainy at all. So I think this has really helped me. And
well, I'm really glad, and you're definitely bright. Just look at your hair. But one thing I would just quickly say on the female thing is that the reason why there's more emphasis on women is that less women are diagnosed with autism because the characteristics tend to be a little bit more milder, so less people kind of get picked up. And I think that's why there's like a bigger difference between getting support as a man and getting support as a woman. It's just that people at diagnosing just aren't as good at understanding.
Yeah, and it's also because men have, there's more research about boys and men who have autism, so the diagnostic tools are based on male characteristics, and so over the generations females have not been picked up, which is why people in my age group, in my 40s, we're classed as a missed generation, where there wasn't enough known about women with autism. And in history, there was a point where they didn't think women could get autism, but girls and women can. So so there's now kind of more emphasis to help women recognize the traits, and our traits are slightly different because we mask better. And that's why we have it's not that we've been excluding males, it's just that we are slightly different to the male characteristics and traits.
Well, guys, one thing I would like to, oh, Matt's around. Hey, Matt, he's the founder of VI. And is that you can always get in touch with us, you know, get involved. Autism is like an ongoing thing, you know, it's always developing. We're learning new things about it. I recommend reading Neurotribes. It's a great book that's taught me a lot of things. But I think that's kind of it from me, really. But we do, Dave mentioned a question about what's the difference between ADD and autism. And a few of you were like, well, I have dyslexia or dyspraxia. We have webinars nearly every week, and we've got ones, you know, am I dyslexic? Do I have dyscalculia? What's the difference between Asperger's and autism? I really recommend you have a look at our upcoming events, which again will be in the email, and I'd love to see you guys again, or Day.
Day. Thanks, Nat. I've really enjoyed your presentation. It's been really helpful.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, I second that. Thanks, Matt.